Tuesday at the winter meetings was light on action, but heavy on talking. There was some talking about Teoscar Hernandez, some talking about Roki Sasaki, and a little bit of action. Max Fried signed. We'll talk about the comparison of his contract to Blake Snell's. A lot to talk about all that stuff live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And your team, that's the World Series champion, Los Angeles Dodgers. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with me live here on Tuesday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Semperia, although it's just me tonight. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as we get started here on the podcast, like I said, I guess technically there were two transactions for the Dodgers on Tuesday. They made official the signings of Michael Conforto and Blake Trinan that were both reported on Sunday, I guess. And so we're not going to dig into those again, but those are now official. The Dodgers 40-man roster now sits at 39, I believe. Excuse me. And so beyond that, there was just a lot of talking. And some of that talking was from Joel Wolf, the agent for, among other people, Roki Sasaki. I'm going to dig into his comments on Sasaki in the second segment. He also talked about his client, Nolan Arenado, who we talked about yesterday. Seems like maybe some of the bigger media names are starting to realize, oh, that's not really a fit. So hopefully we're going to dodge that bullet. We'll see. So Joel Wolf had some interesting stuff to talk about. Like I said, we'll talk about his Sasaki comments in the next segment. But this first segment, we're going to talk about some comments from your favorite GM and mine, Andrew Friedman, technically not a GM, but president of baseball operations or whatever. But he runs the Dodgers, and he had some interesting stuff to say. He actually talked about Roki Sasaki too. I'll mention some of that in the Sasaki segment in a few minutes. But specifically, I want to talk about his comments about Teoscar Hernandez. There's still no news on Teoscar Hernandez. He is still going through the process of free agency, and which is his right. That's why you work hard to become a free agent, and it's why you go ahead and have a career year in your walk year so that you do have all the options in free agency. And that's what Teoscar is doing. A couple things that Andrew Friedman said about Teoscar. He said, I know he's talked about wanting to re-sign. I know that we've talked about wanting him to, but it's not everything. He and his family get to go through the interest and figure out what makes the most sense for them. Friedman also said, we're hopeful. At the same time, if he ends up signing somewhere else, we have no choice but to wish him well. And on a personal level, we'll be really happy for him, and professionally, not so much. And, it's about as honest an answer as you're going to get from a president of baseball operations at the winter meetings about a current free agent. It's pretty straightforward. And, I think the Dodgers have a number of years and a dollar number. I think the number of years is probably more important. The fact is Teoscar Hernandez is unlikely to age super well. And, he's already, he's 32 years old. I suspect the Dodgers would like to have him for 3 years, and their interest beyond 3 years is significantly lower. I think they'd probably be willing to pay him, a pretty darn reasonable amount per year. But I suspect they're stuck on 3 years. I wouldn't be surprised if Teoscar has to end up making the choice. Do I want to take 3 years from the Dodgers or 4 years or even 5 years from someone else? And that would be a tough decision. Who knows what he's going to do. But ultimately it is up to him. That's the point of being a free agent. And the Dodgers, I think they're not that they aren't willing to be flexible for Teoscar Hernandez, but the fact is he was a 1-year Dodger so far. It's not like we're talking about, a guy who is going to have his number retired or anything like that. As much as we love Teoscar Hernandez, and we're not talking about a perfect ball player. He is a pretty bad defender in left field. He strikes out too much. Obviously, a very good hitter. He was very valuable for the Dodgers in the regular season and in the postseason, and that's why everybody would love to have him back. But he's not necessarily the kind of player who you just throw away all reason for and say, we have to have this guy back. And so, yeah, I still think Teoscar is going to come back. I think he wants to be a Dodger. And I think ultimately, if the Dodgers offer him 3 years and, $80 million or $75 million, somewhere in that ballpark, even if he could get 4 years and $90 million somewhere else, I think he would probably choose the Dodgers offer over that because winning is fun. And the Dodgers are the one team in baseball that have proven that they know how to win consistently. The Yankees are probably interested in him. The Red Sox are probably interested in him. Both of those teams they don't have the recent track record of we are going to compete for the World Series title every single year. And the Dodgers do. And so I think Teoscar will be back. If he doesn't come back, I was looking at some of the alternatives. Another free agent outfielder is Anthony Santander, who was actually his whole career so far with the Orioles. Santander is a different kind of hitter than Teoscar. More power, less batting average, probably a worse base runner, and about equally bad on defense. And so, the end result is that they have similar values as hitters. Teo's OPS plus was 137, Santander's was 134. Both valuable hitters. They go about it in different ways. Santander doesn't strike out as much as Teoscar does. Santander does have a qualifying offer attached, which so far the Dodgers haven't signed anybody with the qualifying offer. That's something for them to consider. There's also, Seiya Suzuki is rumored to be on the trade block from the Cubs. Suzuki, had an OPS plus of 138, kind of that same range as a hitter, strikes out almost as much as Teoscar does, much more similar to Teoscar from an offensive profile than Santander is. And not great defensively, probably a little bit better than those two guys. So that's an option depending on what the Cubs are looking for. He's also relatively affordable. He's making $19 million a year for each of the next 2 years, so reasonably priced. And another name that I've seen thrown around, our buddy Brandon Johnson keeps talking about Randall Grichuk. And Randall Grichuk wouldn't necessarily be a replacement for Teoscar Hernandez, but, thinking along the lines of, if you're thinking of Michael Conforto as a platoon player, which is hard, like we said the other day, Conforto was actually better against lefties last year than he was against righties, but that's not the case throughout his career. If you're thinking of Conforto to face righties and you wanted the other half of that platoon, you've got Andy Pages, but Randall Grichuk, the last 3 years, he's had an OPS well over 900 every year against left-handed pitching. The dude mashes lefties. For his career, it's 833 against lefties, but 4 of the last 5 years, it's been well into the 900s. He seemed to figure something out around 2020 and just mashes lefties. And so, that's a name I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that name. He's a good hitter against left-handed pitching. I always remember Randall Grichuk hit a home run off of Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs in that game where the Cardinals eventually scored 7 runs in the 7th inning, 6 runs in the 7th inning, the game that doesn't exist, 2014, game 1 of the NLDS. Rough game. Randall Grichuk hit a home run. That was the only run, maybe even the only hit that Kershaw allowed through the first 6 innings. So yeah, he's always had a history of hitting lefties. But ultimately, you're also looking at Teoscar's impact in the clubhouse, which is not as important as on the field, but it is important. He's very popular in the clubhouse with the fans, all of that. So, I really do think Teoscar Hernandez is going to be a Dodger. And, it makes sense that he's going through this process. But at the end of the day, I hope he's back. I wouldn't mind having him and Randall Grichuk, and then you've got your outfield there. You've got a platoon of Conforto and Grichuk. You got Teoscar in right, and you got Tommy Edman in center. Go get him. But that's my thoughts on the Teoscar situation. We know that Andrew Friedman wants him back. The question is it a fit? We will find out probably this week. I'm guessing that Teoscar will sign somewhere this week, but we'll see. I'm going to come back in a minute. Like I said a little bit ago, Joel Wolf, the agent for Roki Sasaki, had some interesting comments, and so did Andrew Friedman about Sasaki. So I'm going to come back and talk about that. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. I'm looking at the odds for this weekend's NFL games. I mentioned yesterday the huge mismatch. The Ravens are still minus 1,400 favorites over the New York Giants. If you're looking for a smart one to place your $5 bet on to get your $150 in bonus bets, you could do worse than the 1,400 favorite. There's also, where's the one? The Buffalo Bills are minus 820 over the Patriots. And Vince always tells you can never go wrong betting against the Raiders, although the Raiders this week looks like they're actually favored over the Jacksonville Jaguars. So maybe you don't want – oh, no, that's December 22nd. I scrolled too far. Who do the Raiders play this week? Maybe they don't play. All right, so – oh, there they are, the Falcons on Monday Night Baseball. Yep, Falcons are minus 235 favorites. So if you want to take Vince's advice and bet against the Raiders, you could do that. Either way, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I am back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thanks for being with us live. Remember, you can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can subscribe wherever you're watching and listen right now to become an everydayer. Make it easy on yourself to know when we are going live or when a new episode drops, mostly live most of the time. Do all that. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube, 224/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. And I am just scanning the chat really quick, see if there's anything that I need to jump in on. Nothing that's jumping out at me right now. I do appreciate there's a lot going on in the chat. A lot of you here live with me. I appreciate that. Like I said, Roki Sasaki's agent, Joel Wolf, talked at the winter meetings about Sasaki and his process and all that's going on there. And there were... My summary of what Joel Wolf said was, paraphrasing, we're not ruling anybody out because that would be dumb business. That's basically what he said. He said it in a lot of different ways. He gave reasons why Sasaki might prefer a smaller market team because the media in Japan has been hard on him. And so maybe he would rather go to a smaller market team where the media is less intense. Okay. There's a reason why he might go to a small market, but he's also interested in winning, and he'll take into account, he said every player is different. Every Japanese player is different. He was the agent for Kodai Senga too. Every Japanese player is different, what they're looking for as far as do they want to be teammates with other Japanese players? Would they rather not? All those things. He said endorsements are going to be important, et cetera, et cetera. It all boils down to we are going to listen to all the offers and we are going to make our decision, because it would be dumb business on the day that he's posted for them to rule out any team, to say we are only interested in a big market. No, they're not going to say that. But ultimately, I still believe that the Dodgers make a lot more sense than anybody. If he's worried about the pressure, well, what less pressureful situation is there than to go? Pressureful is not a word, by the way. I know that. I have an English degree. I can say it anyway. Then to go to a team with a ton of superstars where you are going to be overshadowed by Shohei Ohtani. I mean, even Mookie Betts is overshadowed by Shohei Ohtani. That's a pretty good recipe for, hey, not too much pressure on you here. Just go do your thing. So I think it makes sense from that standpoint. I've mentioned before the endorsements. I think it's a no-brainer to go to the Dodgers, because in addition to Japanese companies are already obsessed with the Dodgers because of Ohtani and Yamamoto, well, there's also a chance for the three of them doing endorsements together. There's so much there. And when we're talking about the media, the LA media is about as friendly as you're going to get in a big market. There's friendly and there's apathetic. I think in a smaller market, you can get the apathetic. If you have, I'm not going to name a team, but I'm going to go to a team where the media doesn't really care about the team. That's not really what you want. But a team like the Dodgers, where the LA media, I mean, you hear New York's fans, Boston fans talk all the time about, oh, that guy's too soft. He couldn't handle the East Coast. The LA media is easy on him. Great. Come to LA where the media is going to be easy on you. There's a ton of Japanese media, obviously the Japanese speaking. Then you get to the baseball side of things. And that's where Andrew Friedman's comments were interesting. Friedman said he's someone that obviously is a major priority for us. We're going to do whatever we can. We know that there are a lot of other teams that are going to do the exact same thing. Friedman also said they recognize that Sasaki wants to be the best pitcher in the world, and the Dodgers believe he has that potential. And the Dodgers believe that they have the tools, the personnel to help him get there. On the field, that's a no-brainer. The Dodgers have proven that they can help pitchers be the best they can be. Friedman said, we've had guys who are 33 years old who we've found little tweaks and improved their game. You think we can't do that with a 23-year-old? Also, the Dodgers are already planning on a 6-man rotation. Friedman mentioned that too, that the fact that Shohei Ohtani will qualify as a two-way player, a month into the season, means the Dodgers are equipped to be to do a 6-man rotation like no other team in baseball can. And so Sasaki coming over, being able to do that like he's used to, just from a baseball standpoint, there's no way that it means any that there's any other team that really can compete with the Dodgers. Throw in the fact that, you want to win a World Series, your best chance is with the Dodgers. It comes back to everybody wants to win, and the Dodgers, again, give them their best chance every player's best chance to compete for a World Series every single year. Whoever Sasaki signs with, he knows I'm going to be with that team for at least 6 years. Dodgers are the only team that you can look at and say, I'm sure they're going to be in the postseason all 6 years. Only team. There's other teams, I'm not saying the Dodgers will be the only team that makes the postseason all 6 of those years. It's the only team that I'd be confident right now saying they will each of the next 6 years. So that's it really does make sense. And I saw a lot of people panicking about Joel Wolf's comments about a smaller market. Oh no, Sasaki wants to go to a smaller market. No, he doesn't. He wants to keep his options open, which is what you do a month before you're signing a contract. You keep your options open. He can spend the next month and 5 weeks thinking, talking to different teams, and ultimately make a decision, which is going to be the Dodgers. Roki Sasaki is going to be a Dodger. Write it down. That's I saw a comment here. Now I missed it. I lost it. When I was scrolling through the chat, I didn't mean to say that none of your comments are worth noticing. I can't find it now. Lara was Jeff is definitely unimpressed with our comments. No, I am not unimpressed with your comments. It's just really hard to keep an eye on the chat and do a solo episode at the same time, as I've mentioned before. I'm doing my best though. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Sasaki. I mean, the other thought is every team is going to be in on Sasaki. I think it's good to keep our expectations realistic. I don't think he's going to win the Cy Young Award in 2025. I don't think he's going to be, I think he's going to be a good pitcher in 2025. I don't think he will be a top 10 Cy Young finisher. But I think he's going to be good. And I think the talent that he has, we have to remember the age that he is, all that you think of him more like a guy you're drafting out of college with his stuff. And you would be thrilled to draft this guy. This is the type of talent that would go first overall in the draft. Dodgers never get to pick first overall in the draft because the Dodgers have good teams every year. The Dodgers are going to be picking like 40th this year, 37th, something for their first pick. Dodgers don't get those 1-1 picks. This is a chance to get a 1-1 pick. And just like you wouldn't expect a first overall pick to win the Cy Young, you know what? Sometimes they put up a pretty good fight. Paul Skeens finished, third in the Cy Young voting this year, a year after being drafted. You know, the talent-wise, they're different kinds of pitchers. I'm not going to say he's the same kind of pitcher as Paul Skeens. Talent-wise there, though, it's right up there. And so I really want him on the Dodgers, even with keeping our expectations realistic. Richard says that if he was Clint, I would have read his comments. That's true, Richard. I read of all of Clint's comments. Clint isn't here, though. I actually asked Clint if he wanted to talk with me, and he said, no, I'm doing stuff. So, you know what? But I am happy that all of you are here. I mean, I'll come back in a minute. Max Fried signed with the Yankees, 8-year deal, $218 million, I think. And it was an interesting trade. And I want to talk about in the context of not a trade, a signing. I'm going to talk about the contract in the context of the Blake Snell contract. So thanks for being with me, and please keep it locked on Dodgers. I am back. Thank you again for being with me. As you can hear in my voice, I had a cold like 2 weeks ago, and then I got over it pretty quickly. And then the cough and the voice have trailed. So I feel fine, but the voice is trying to be silly. You remember earlier this year, I had a couple bouts with losing my voice. So hopefully it doesn't get that bad, but I'm battling it. I'm sucking on a cough drop while I'm talking, trying to keep it lubricated so that we can finish this episode off. Jack says, I want the Dodgers to sign Lance Lynn. Well, Jack, that makes one of us. Just looking at Robert Brown doesn't believe Juan Soto's age. I see some comments about Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger's not coming back to the Dodgers. He's not a fit. The bat doesn't justify a corner outfield spot, and that's the only spot the Dodgers would have for him. So he's not coming back. Frank says the rest of the league has Shohei Ohtani derangement and players are being overpaid this offseason. I think that there's a little bit of Ohtani. Juan Soto was always going to get paid crazy dollars. Obviously, I think it went up because of Ohtani, but I do think that Ohtani and Soto are two different kinds of uniforms. Ohtani because of being a unicorn, and Soto because of his age, or at least his reported age, if you want to be like Robert Brown and say that he's lying about his age. But, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. I don't think we're going to see other deals in the $700 million range for a little while. I just don't think there's that many players who are going to justify that. Mike McCain throws out Kyle Tucker, another name that I thought about mentioning, although I think I might want to do a full segment on Kyle Tucker tomorrow, because the Astros did mention that they are open to listening to trade offers on Kyle Tucker. And Kyle Tucker is a guy who I'm very interested in, and I didn't want to throw him in as a toss in the Teoscar Hernandez segment, but we probably will talk about Kyle Tucker on tomorrow's episode. EB says, I want the Dodgers to win 3 consecutive World Series championships and for every other fan base to cry and complain, and I can laugh. I was thinking about the other day, and this wasn't what I was going to talk about. I'll get to the Fried and Snell contracts, but I assume it would eventually get boring if the Dodgers just kept winning the World Series every year. But I was trying to think, and I'm pretty sure the record for most consecutive World Series titles is 5, which was the Yankees in the late 40s, early 50s. I think they won 5 in a row. And so I think 6 in a row. I wouldn't, having the Dodgers set that record, I would be okay with that. The 7th one, I might start thinking, well, maybe let's let somebody else win it once. So I think that's where my line is. I'd be interested to hear where your line is, because I want the Dodgers to win every year, but I do think I would get, a little bored with it after a while. Although, like we've seen, every World Series title is different, and there's different players every time. And this year we had Teoscar Hernandez, who wasn't on the team in 2020. We had, a ton of guys who had never won a World Series before. And so, you're going to have those guys every year. Hey, this is my first World Series title, all that. So it's exciting every year. But I think 6 is the number I want. And the 7th one is when I would start to think, okay, this is getting out of hand, Dodgers. But Laura Lara says she has no line. BC says, never bored, 5 straight World Series record. How about a 6-peat? Yeah, I agree with that. Richard says, winning and being bored is better than losing. Absolutely. I do love that the Dodgers have a chance every year. So let's dig in. We'll just talk for a couple minutes about Max Fried. Excuse me while I cough. Max Fried signed with the Yankees, 8 years, $218 million. And that's $27.25 million per year. You remember the Blake Snell contract was 5 years, $182 million. That's a $36.4 million per year. The Dodgers are paying more per year for Snell than the Yankees are for Fried, which makes sense because Snell is a better pitcher. I think Fried is a good pitcher. I think Snell has the better stuff, is likely to age better. I'm interested I wonder though, did the Yankees actually want an 8-year contract with Max Fried, or was this we want him for 5 years. Let's make it 8 years to drop the AAV for luxury tax purposes, all that. Is this some financial stuff? Just like when the Phillies signed Bryce Harper, they did 13-year contract. And it's like, okay, all they were doing was dragging down the AAV for luxury tax purposes, which, no problem with that. But if we look at, the raw dollars, if you're thinking of Max Fried as a 5-year pitcher spread out over 8 years, well, then the actual total value of the contract, it's a valid comparison. And Blake Snell got $182 million. Max Fried got $218 million. I do believe that I think the Dodgers are happy that they signed Blake Snell when they did. I think they're happy with the dollar numbers. And I think Blake Snell is not kicking himself for sure. I think Blake Snell is happy because he got certainty early in this offseason. I think this is something that he recognized was a possibility, that maybe the pitching market would explode. Nathan Eovaldi got 3 years, $75 million today. $25 million a year. Both of those are less per year than Snell got. Overall, my main thing, I've seen a lot of people just saying, oh, wow, the Fried contract really shows what a great deal the Dodgers got. I feel like this Dodgers contract with Blake Snell is very much a win-win. I feel like it's good for the Dodgers and good for Snell. I think it's a really good example of a contract that both sides are going to be really happy with. And obviously, if Snell performs really well and wins a couple World Series titles, he'll be thrilled. The Dodgers will be thrilled. But looking at it, as much as you can judge a contract, a week or two after it's signed, before he's even taken the field in a Dodger uniform, I feel like this really was a win-win contract on the Snell contract. And I think it's the kind of move that, it's what I'm hoping the Dodgers do with Teoscar Hernandez. Let's find a win-win, something that both sides can be really happy with. I do think, from a business standpoint, the Dodgers are good at getting good value, but also I think that they've shown that they want their players to not regret signing contracts with them. They want them to be happy. And so win-win deals are the way to go. And, it's what the Dodgers got with Teoscar Hernandez in 2024. Both sides were thrilled with that contract. everything worked out great. And now, hopefully they can do that again with Teo, with whoever else they sign. There's still stuff coming. We don't know, obviously Roki Sasaki, there's going to be outfield moves. We'll see what they do in the infield. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm confident that things will look a little bit different by the time spring training rolls around. And maybe even this week, the winter meetings, it's been, there's not a ton of action so far, but there's been some action, a lot of talking, and maybe the talking turns to action here the last couple of days of the winter meetings. With that said, just scanning the chat again. Yeah, a lot of people just good with the Dodgers win the World Series every single year. And my old says that no Dodger pitcher will qualify for the ERA title anymore. That's kind of the case already. I was listening to, I don't know if you guys ever listened to the 1988 Tops podcast. Shout it out. I've been a guest on it. I'm going to be a guest on it again soon. Really good. They just take one card from the 1988 Top set every week and talk about it and talk about the player on the card. Really good podcast, but they did Fernando Valenzuela a few weeks ago. And I realized Fernando in 1981, as a 20-year-old rookie in a strike-shortened season, threw 50 more innings than any Dodger pitcher did this year. So, different times. Anyway, that's going to do it for me for today. A lot to talk about coming up. Like I said, probably going to do a Kyle Tucker segment tomorrow or the next day. Vince will be back with me. We'll dig into all that. Thank you all for being here with me live. There's a ton of stuff going on in the chat. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being an everydayer. If you are one, if you're not, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning and make that easier on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening right now. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snidog. DMs are open for both of us over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.